For thousands of years, people have told stories about strange experiences that we cannot explain. Stories that conflict with our understanding of reality. Some of those stories found their way into print, to be read by hundreds, thousands, or even millions of readers before being consigned to the oblivion of the archives. In this series, we dust off forgotten newspaper clippings, magazine articles, and letters from the library of the late Gary Mangiacopra, one of the most prolific collectors of strange stories in the world. Join us as we uncover the forgotten secrets of the archive.
Welcome to another episode of Secrets of the Archive, and right now we're on box 3, folder 3, item 6, Europe, Legendary Beasts at Large. The Internet Crypto Newsletter. Whenever you come to Australia, visit Klagenfurt, the capital of Carinthia. There you'll find the famous Lindworm Monument, which was erected by Ulrich Vogelsang in 1590. Although it represents a dragon, it can be regarded as the first paleontological reconstruction of something. In 1335, the cranium of a woolly rhinoceros from the Ice Age was found in a gravel pit near Klagenfurt. It was instantly interpreted as the skull of a dragon or lindworm. This fossil, which is still at exhibition in Landesmuseum for Kärnten, served as a model for the head of the lindworm. Interesting, we're talking about the lindworm. I don't know anything about German folklore, really, or Austrian folklore. But the lindworm, I remember I did a comparison of Canadian and Scandinavian folklore. And there's something called the lindworm in like Swedish and Norwegian folklore. So I guess it makes sense that it's related to, Austrian-German folklore because they have a connection. Anyway, let's continue. And the lindworm is like a dragon, at least in the Scandinavian folklore. A dragon without wings. However, the legend of a dragon haunting the surroundings of Klagenfurt is much older. The name of the town can be read as Fort of Lament. Floods repeatedly destroyed the crossings over the River Glan, and many persons lost their lives. In medieval times, floods and debris flows were commonly depicted as dragons. Thus, the idea arose that a water dragon is responsible for the lethal accidents near the River Glan. The finding of the rhino skull enhanced that belief. Long time ago, a huge water monster emerged from the sea and chose the River Rhone as its new home. It was a dragoness, half land animal, half fish. She outsized 12 elephants, had teeth like swords, and skin like iron. Her father was the water dragon Leviathan, her mother the giant snake Onakis, and her name was Tarasque. Wherever the beast appeared, she brought terror and destruction. All animals fled her. She destroyed houses, and her breath was flames. Many heroes tried to kill her, and perished. After 7 years of ravage, a farmer found the skin of the dragoness and considered her dead. But every 7 years the Tarasque had to slew, and the farmer had only found her cast-off skin. 7 more years went by. The Tarasque had destroyed all bridges and devoured anyone who wanted to cross the river. At last, the inhabitants of the troubled area tried to lure the dragoness into something near the town. Near the town of Avignon, there was a deep swamp. Whoever got there was lost, so they bound animals to trees near the trail leading to the swamp. The beast followed this line of prey, but when she approached the trap, she turned around and fled back to the river. The swamp belonged to the realm of the devil, and being a creature of the devil herself, the Tarasque was warned. So it looks like we've went from Austria to France. I think we're missing a page here, and it says the power of the cross. The power of the cross and the holy water. St. Martha led the beast to the town where it was killed. The citizens erected a new church in the honor of St. Martha, and the town changed its name to Tarascon. You've got a picture, presumably, of lakes that have water monsters in them, legendary water monsters. We've got Okanagan Lake in British Columbia, Lake Manitoba, home of the Manipogo, it says, Flathead Lake, that's in Montana, and Lake Champlain, home of Champ. And before I forget, I have to tell you about, there was a patron, I don't know if he wants me to share his name, but he helped me when I got stranded with the Cube van in Toledo, Ohio, trying to pick up Gary's files. And he got in touch with me and he says, can I OCR your files? And OCR is when like AI will read it, and it'll read like a picture, and it'll figure out what the text is on the picture. And I said, sure, why not? And I thought this was going to be a long project, because I thought OCR was just you take a screenshot, you put it into ChatGPT. Before ChatGPT, there was other OCR tools that were kind of garbage, and it'll read the text. But this guy had this machine, and he did it. He did the entire archive in a single night, which just absolutely blew my mind. I can't believe that technology exists now. So unbelievable development. So I have to thank him profusely for what he's done here, because what this allows us to do is, instead of in the search bar here, we'd have to search by the only things that were searchable were the titles of these files. Like for example, it'd be this folder here: Internet Crypto Newsletter, Legendary Beasts at Large. So like these were the only things you could search, the only terms that were searchable. But now everything's searchable. So that's crazy. Super cool. So if you're curious about something and you want to find out if it's in the archive so far, just search for it here and it'll pop up for sure. So let's continue here. North America, Champ, and others. Okay, so the picture from the previous folder. Camp. One of the first observations was given by the Canadian explorer Samuel de Champlain, who in 1609 discovered the large lake in Vermont, which now is named after him. What he had seen at today's Champlain was an unknown animal, 11 to 12 meters long and about 30 centimeters in diameter, dark to mahogany in color, almost black and looking like a giant snake. I have to push back a little on this. I remember going through his journal, and he I think he pretty clearly described a garfish. Don't quote me on it. I haven't done a video on it yet. I haven't really researched it in depth, but I remember from what I saw, it sounded like he was describing a garfish. I think that's what it was. But anyway, let's keep going here. At the end of the 1800s, the interest in Champ, as the monster now is called, is so large that the circus director P.T. Barnum offered a fortune to anyone who could capture it alive. No one claimed the reward, but in the summer of 1977, Sandra Mancini saw the head and neck of a strange creature rise out of the water at Lake Champlain. She took a classic picture of Champ, the one that portrays the animal as a plesiosaur from the prehistoric age. Experts has said that the picture is genuine, but when Mancini's negative vanished before it could be examined, the skeptics believe it is a clever forgery. Up to 1992, there were 180 witness accounts of Champ, and of these 83 mentions, a long neck with a small head, which is a common description for a lake monster throughout the entire world. No animal known to science fits such a description, but the prehistoric plesiosaur does. Ponek. Reports of a strange animal in Lake Pohenagamook at Quebec began to pour in 1804. In the summer of 1957, an expedition was launched by Dr. Vadim Vladikov, in charge of Quebec's National Environmental Protection Agency. Soon they were on the lookout for Ponek, or the Pohengamook's sea cow, as the zoologists called the animal, at the time not knowing that sea cows never can be found in inland lakes. According to witness testimonies, Ponek was between 3.5 to 5.5 meters long, brown or black in color, with a roundish back and a 60 to something centimeter wide and serrated fin along its body. As soon as someone got close to the animal, which liked to bask at the surface and frolic in the sun, it glided off and sank to the surface. That's an interesting detail, because the Igopogo was said to always like to go to the top of the water and bask in the sun and frolic. That's words that were commonly used to describe the Igopogo's antics in the water at the surface. In the mid-70s, another expedition was arrayed by the Society for the Investigation of the Unexplained, Situ, that's Ivan Sanderson's group. For 10 days, 3 frogmen equipped with sonar searched for Ponek. At one occasion, they registered a 7.5-meter-long object moving under their own boat. They also managed to take an underwater movie of a long, dark shape that no one could identify. Igopogo. At Simcoe's Lake, close to Ontario, several expeditions have searched for a crocodile-looking creature that goes under the name of Igopogo. In the autumn of 1963, Igopogo was seen by a minister and an undertaker and his family. The animal was described as black in color, 9 to 11 meters long, and had a powerful serrated tail fin. At Lake Simcoe. The Silver Lake Monster. Boys, that thing is moving. Those excited words launched one of the most celebrated lake monster events of 1855, although it has now been long forgotten. At 9 p.m. on the evening of July 13, 1855, 4 men and 2 boys were in a boat fishing on Silver Lake at the northwestern part of New York State. It was shortly after dusk, and the stars illuminated the waters. Suddenly, off the stern of the boat, a long object appeared. At first it looked like a log, 80 or 100 feet long, and the group did not pay much attention to it until it disappeared abruptly and reappeared moments later in another position. Its head, it could no longer be called a log, was now within 3 rods of the boat. The Wyoming County Times reported on July 18th, 1855, as it approached, the waves parted on either side as if a boat were leisurely approaching. The fishermen were somewhat dismayed, and Alonzo Scribner wasted no time in trying to cut the anchor rope. But he dropped his knife into the water and had to haul the anchor up by hand while his comrades put their backs to their oars. The thing bobbed beneath the waves again, and again reappeared behind their stern. All in the boat had a fair view of the creature, the Times story continued, and concur in representing it as a most horrid and repulsive-looking monster. The party reached the shore in safety, but frightened most out of their senses. Between 1885 and 86, the monster of Silver Lake was seen by hundreds of people. An Indian named John came forward and said that tribes in the past that had camped by the lake had seen and been frightened by a monster lizard. Flathead Lake. The most authentic of the American lake monsters may be living at the bottom of Flathead Lake, near Polson, Montana. Whatever it is, it has been seen by a great many people over a long stretch of time. Back in the 1920s, fishermen on Flathead Lake complained that some giant unidentified swimming object was tearing their nets to shreds, even nets designed to withstand 40-pound bull trout. In September 1960, Mr. Gilbert Ziegler heard waves crashing against the shore and saw water splashing high over the end of a pier. Moving up for a closer look, Ziegler and his wife were amazed to see a huge black something rubbing up against the pier, like an animal scratching its back. It was a horrible looking thing, Ziegler recalled. It had the head about the size of a horse, and about a foot of neck showing. He ran back to his house for his rifle, but by the time he returned, the creature was swimming out of range. Slimy Slim. Then there was Payette Lake in Idaho. The creature was called Slimy Slim, and has created much a sensation in the USA as Nessie has in Scotland. In the summer of 1931, John Mackay saw an animal with large humps and a lizard-like head. A couple of months later, a periscope-looking neck was seen. On top of it was a small head. Shortly thereafter, a known businessman said he had seen a snub-nosed crocodile in the lake, at least 15 meters long. That's interesting because a lot of these lakes, at least in Canada, Okanagan Lake, Kootenay Lake, and there are others I can't recall that are supposed to have these lake monsters in them. A lot of people describe what they see as a crocodile. Chessie. In 1982, the Enigma Project became inextricably involved in investigating and documenting reports of a Chesapeake Bay phenomenon. For nearly 20 years, newspapers of Maryland and Virginia have been documenting reports of a huge snake-like animal, allegedly seen in the Chesapeake Bay and its larger tributaries. The mysterious beast, nicknamed Chessie by the press, has been repeatedly described as serpentine, about 25 to 40 feet in length, 8 to 10 inches in diameter, and possessing an elliptical, football-shaped head. Reportedly, the creature is a uniformly dark color, having no fins or bodily appendages. Although the project has secured interviews with retired watermen, who recalled talk of giant snakes seen many years ago in southern Maryland swamps, Chessie's notoriety really surfaced as recently as 1978, when Virginia newspapers began printing contemporary sightings of the beast. For several years, reported sightings of the alleged animal remained unsubstantiated, until May 31st, 1982. On that date, at around 7:30 p.m., Maryland resident Robert Frew videotaped a long, dark, serpent-like creature swimming in the Chesapeake Bay, about 100 feet off the bulkhead of his Kent Island home. The less than 2 minutes of video recording that Frew shot proved to be very interesting and quickly caught the attention of the Enigma Project researchers, who launched an investigation of it. On August 20th, 1982, the Enigma Project succeeded in getting the Frew videotape an audience with Dr. George Zug and other scientists at the Smithsonian Institution's Museum of Natural History. After thoroughly examining the tape, the scientists, although intrigued by what it apparently depicted, were unable to reach any conclusions about the animate object shown. The videotape's quality was simply not good enough to allow such a determination. As a result of the publicity concerning the Smithsonian's viewing, Enigma Project directors were contacted. The following September, scientists at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory in Laurel, Maryland. Researchers at the Applied Physics Laboratory offered to perform computer image enhancement of the Frew tape in an effort to extract from it more information about the mystery animal. The computer work initially conducted isolated an impressive, unmistakable serpentine shape from the surrounding waters. Unfortunately, soon after the enhancement techniques began, the internal funding that the Applied Physics Laboratory allowed for the Fru videotape work ran out. Further enhancements on the Fru tape have been suspended, pending the availability of some outside source funding. Since 1983, the videotape has remained in limbo. Interesting. I wonder how AI would do in enhancing that now. Presently, no one knows what Chessie is. Nevertheless, compelling detailed reports from credible, reliable witnesses suggest the possibility of an unknown animal. Although the number of Chessie reports vary from year to year, they persist all the time. Tahoe Tessie. Each season, about half a dozen Tahoe Basin residents and visitors report seeing something large, dark, and sinuous swimming in the lake, briefly showing itself, then disappearing beneath the waves. Each season, about half a dozen Tahoe Basin residents and visitors report seeing something large, dark, and sinuous swimming in the lake. Oh, it's just a reproduction of the same paragraph. These sightings of Tahoe Tessie, as she is called, after Loch Ness's Nessie, have caused quite a stir. On the one hand, those who have seen Tessie naturally believe in her existence, and a Tahoe Tessie museum and phone hotline for sightings have been established in Kings Beach on the north shore of the lake. On the other hand, some skeptics claim that Tessie eyewitnesses are mistaking logs or waves for sea monsters. Washoe Indian legends speak of monsters inhabiting the lake. Local author John Rausch argues that Tessie is really just a rogue giant sturgeon. And so the debate continues. Perhaps someday Lake Tahoe will be graced with a visit by the International Society of Cryptozoology, an organization that investigates such matters, and some progress will be made in solving the mystery. Then again, scientists with the UC Davis Tahoe Research Group under Professor Charles Goldman came to the lake in 1984 to investigate Tessie, but their study was inconclusive. And here's the OCR text here. How awesome is that? That is just fantastic. A lot of people hate AI, but it can do such cool things now. Okay, and now we're on item 8, the best of Lake Vorota. Russia, the beast of Lake Vorota. The following text is a translation and adaptation from the story by the Englishman Gordon W. Creighton, who in turn took it from the article by Dr. S.K. Klumov, who had it published in the scientific magazine Prior Nature in August 1962. In eastern Siberia, there is high mountains and largely unpopulated areas. The climate is extremely cold. I'm foremost referring to the Sordono tablelands in the Oymyakon plains, not far from the cold, Verkhoyansk. No zoologist or botanist have ever visited this inhospitable area. During the Tertiary period, this vast region was relatively low, situated according to geologists, and sloped gradually eastward. The mountains that was created at the same time, cut off the new low area from Lake Okhotsk and raised it with some 1,000 meters. On this relatively new plateau, a few smaller rivers were dammed up by the collapsing rock and created the system of linked lakes. In July 1953, the Russian geologist V.A. Terdoklebov came there with a group of prospectors engaged in geological investigations of the Sordono tablelands. A sunny summer's day, they visited Lake Vorota. There was no wind on the surface, was like a mirror. Suddenly, Tver Kotelboy and his young colleague Boris Bashkatov saw an object in the water about 300 meters from the shore, reflected by the sun. First they thought it was an empty oil barrel, but then they discovered it was alive. It swam at high speeds towards the shore, right for the place where the witnesses were standing. The geologists quickly climbed the rocks, and I'm sorry that's the end of it. I think we read part of this article in a different folder. Sometimes they got mixed up. Anyway, let's go to the next one. Facts about the Great Lake Monster. Through interviews with eyewitnesses, we have come to the following interesting features about the Great Lake Monster. What's the Great Lake Monster? The smallest length is 3 to 4 meters, the largest 7 to 8 meters. The width varies between 100 to 150 centimeters, and the height over the surface of the water is 75 to 100 centimeters. What is this? I guess they're just looking at all the different lake monsters and kind of presuming that they're the same species, I guess, and they're trying to describe what it looks like. Okay, 15 witnesses are talking about an upside-down boat. That is a common thing with the Igopogo story. A lot of people say it looks like an upside-down boat, while 10 describe it as resembling a log, another one, similar to the Igopogo. Humps. 8 witnesses have seen 3 humps or more. Color. The leading color is black, followed by gray with shades of brown, yellow, and red. Fins, feet, and other appendices. In 5 cases, witnesses have seen feet on the animal, and in 3 of these cases, 4 feet. Fins are only seen in 2 cases, while 5 witnesses describe ears, head, and neck. 3 witnesses describe the head as dog-like. Then comes the moose-like, horse-like, snake-like, and lizard-like heads. I'm going to add to that sheep-like because that is the most common with the Igopogo, at least. The neck is long, and the head is considered small in comparison to the body in general. 2 independent witnesses give a similar description of large eyes and a red mouth, one with the tongue going back and forth. The other witness with a swan-looking neck, red and shiny. 24 witnesses said the Great Lake monster had a very high speed. The animal seems to be capable of a speed between 10 to 15 knots, up to 20 knots, and maybe exceeding this. I just thought, is the Great Lake monster something seen in, like, North America's Great Lakes? Like Superior, Ontario, Huron, Erie, Michigan? Time of the year. August is the leading month with 26 observations, and the leading quarter of the year is the third with 54.8%. August. Ogopogo was July, for sure. Weather. Sunny weather to 76%. The Great Lake monster is a shy creature, only seen between 1 to 5 minutes, and the longest observation ever made, from October 13th, 1890-something, was an exceptional 4 hours. Times of the day, the most common time is the evening. I wonder what this is. I don't really know what the Great Lake monster is supposed to be. And now we're on item 10, Sweden, land of unknown serpents. Sweden has not only got the Great Lake monster. Okay, here's the Great Lake monster at Lake Storsjön, province of Champlain to the north of Sweden. There is reports from over the country, even if lake monsters seem to be endangered species nowadays. They are popular to read about, but hard to report, and most people are unfortunately being ridiculed when they come forward. So the Great Lake monster is at Lake Storsjön in Sweden. Lake Salstern, 1865 to 1870. In the autumn of 1977, I was a fascinated listener to Ollie Larsen, a supervisor from Bjorno Nykirka in the province of Östergötland, who told me about snake-like monsters that he had seen 100 years earlier that had been seen 100 years earlier in the system of lakes surrounding Lake Salstern. Sometime between 1865 and 1870, 12-year-old Kalle Gustafsson and his friend Adolf Tancred, of the same age, went to look for a snake at Lake Svartsjön. There was plenty of vipers in the area, and in these days there was nothing wrong in killing them. On the contrary, Kalle and Adolf had the shock of their life this day, because there was a snake on the creek that had twisted its body 3 times across it, says Ollie Larsen. As the creek was at least 2 meters wide, this snake must have been 5 to 6 meters long. It was brown in color, had a mane on its back, and antennas on each side of its head that measured 20 centimeters. Adolf Tancred was scared out of his wits and ran home. Kalle Gustafsson was equipped with a fish spear, and didn't dare to use it. Instead, he asked his mother to guard the snake, and ran to the house to get Rupert, a hunter. Rupert was not home, however, and when Kalle returned, the snake was gone. It sure sounds impossible with a snake 5 to 6 meters long in Sweden, but Kalle took an oath that what he and Adolf had seen was true, and I believed him, says Ollie Larsen. Some 20 years later, brothers August and Victor Carlson were looking for crayfish in nearby Lake Rezion Lake, or Blomdalsen Lake, as it was called in the 1890s. In those days, they used a tar torch of pine. While August was punting along, Victor held the torch. Suddenly, Victor saw something in the water that was as long and thick as a timber log. He shouted to August not to run it over. The next instant, the monster disappeared into the depth. Large waves from it rocked the boat. Around 1920, Gunnar Carlson caught something big. He was fishing from his boat, and whatever he had on managed to tow his heavy boat, Ollie Larsen continued. It snapped free in the reeds, and Gunnar himself thought it must have been a giant pike, but I doubt that a pike could have been able to tow a boat. 10 years later, in the summer of 1930, Ollie Larsen himself was the witness of a mysterious creature at Lake Salstern. I was in my 20s, and came with a cart along the old roads by the lakes, when the horse reared for a large brown snake. I didn't see more than 1.5 meters of it, but it was as thick as my upper arm. The snake had, according to Ollie Larsen, come from Lake Bjoksfjord and crawled over the road as a caterpillar. Wow, as a caterpillar, before it vanished into some high hazel shrub by the side of the road. It was no usual snake, that's for sure, and it must have been at least 3 to 4 meters long, Ollie Larsen concluded. So that is a really interesting detail. It crawled like a caterpillar, which kind of evokes the vertical oscillation that literally almost all of these alleged sea serpents and lake monsters take. Like this. See what I mean with my mouse here? You can see? Because snakes don't go like that. Snakes go back and forth. and fish go back and forth. Mammals go like this, like a whale would do that, or like an otter or a seal or a beaver, I think. Um, so it crawled like a caterpillar. That's super interesting. Could it have been a baby monster? The description is quite consistent with what has been seen at another Swedish lake, Storsjön, Lake Seljordvatnet in Norway, and Loch Ness in Scotland. If you accept that these and other lakes could contain whole families of unknown animals, there must be babies as well. In 1899, people around Lake Vastjöten, about 10 kilometers north of Finspång, would take an oath that they had seen a dragon swimming in the lake. A dragon swimming in the lake, but also walking on the beach. The north of Sweden has its monsters too. Lake Malgomaj, 1917. An interesting account comes from Jonas Lundberg, oldest in the family who became pioneers for the boating traffic of the Great Lakes. Malgomaj and Voimsjön. Jonas Lundberg was deeply religious. A conscious lie was unthinkable to him. Shortly before we reached Forsbergberget Mountain, the Prestholm right below, I saw a large animal with a round head and a snake-like body coming sideways on the lake. He related in the summer of 1917. The head looked like a pot, bottom first. I didn't see much of its body, but it was at least 25 to 30 meters long and had a row of humps. Lake Stensjön, 1934. Who can explain what came up in the summer of 1934 at Lake Stensjön, some 20 kilometers southeast of Söderpåking, in the south of Sweden? I apologize, I'm probably butchering all these Swedish words here. A man from Norrköping should have seen a monster there for 5 summers in a row. He described it as 10 meters long, with a horse-like head, dark and roundish. Elderly people in the area confirmed that there had been an unknown animal in the lake since the 1800s. An old woman who used to pick berries by Lake Stensjön said she had seen it on land and was so scared she left the forest and ran all the way home. Lake Tavelsjön, 1943. On July 23, 1943, the Tavelsjön monster appeared at Lake Tavelsjön, some 30 kilometers west of Umeå, in the north of Sweden. It looked like an upside-down boat at first, and I thought it must have been that, said a witness who wished to remain anonymous. But then it dived into the water, and the surface was calm once more. The animal came up again, however, whipping the water before it vanished a second time, so another description of it looking like an upside-down boat. A common belief was that the Tavelsjön monster was a catfish, even if none had been encountered as far north, and neither could live on that latitude. Lake Rasvaljen, 1950. A catfish was also thought to inhabit Lake Rasvallen at Lindsberg in the province of Västmanland, even if what was seen was described as log-like, some 5 meters long and black in color. Sigvard Barnström from Vedevagsbruk said that he, in July 1950, had been on the lake at about 5 in the morning to search through the fishing nets when he saw a log-like object floating on the water, some 300 meters away. When he came closer, it dived with a big splash and was gone. You have to believe your own eyes, and I had a friend with me in my boat who could testify that it was a giant monster, at least 5 meters long, said Sigvard Barnström. The 2 men started to chase the unknown animal. They were drawn in a hide-and-seek, where the creature surfaced, dived back down, to resurface once more. The unlikely fishing went on for another 3 hours, before the monster vanished into the depths and stayed there. Next time, I'll bring my rifle, said Sigvard Barnström. The unknown animal was seen again in July 1953, when approached by 4 people in a motorboat. They were quite surprised to see the animal some 4 meters long. When they came closer, the beast vanished into the depth. Lake Likjason, 1966. One summer's afternoon in 1966, Ingvar Hansen, his ex-wife, and their 3 children, all from Motala, province of Östergötland, where the author lives, went up to Lake Likjason and their summer's cabin. It was somewhere between 3 and 4 p.m. when the family stood on a small hill overlooking the lake, and Ingvar Hansen spotted something in the water he couldn't identify, but still sensed it was a large animal. I asked my ex-wife if she could see what I saw, and she confirmed it, he said later. What we saw came straight at us, and so fast that it created a wake. It was like a large boat, and had come on the lake. It was like a large boat had come on the lake, so another description of it leaving a wake. Some 150 meters away from the family, it dived but resurfaced again. Ingvar Hansen described the animal as 3.5 meters long and narrowing at the front with a clearly marked head. It was grayish in color and had a hump-like back, which appeared to move vertical through the water. Ingvar Hansen was stunned by what he saw, but later thought it must have been a catfish. His ex-wife and children were so frightened by it they didn't return to the lake in a long time. Lake Fagin, 1969. Lake Fagin, on the border of the province of Västergötland, also have a mysterious monster. At least 20 people saw it in the summer of 1969, describing it as a black body 4 meters long, giving off a hissing sound. Einar Sanden at Lilla Katibo, chairman of the local board of fisheries, was at 8 o'clock in the morning, a weekday in May that same year, by the lake to see if anyone had got to their boat into the water yet for the summer's fishing. Suddenly I saw some kind of animal moving with tremendous speed along the opposite shore, he related some years later. It caused no wake, and the larger part of it was below the surface. Around something was looking like a big hump with a tail behind it. I saw movements in the water. Each time the animal to a speed of Einar timed the animal to a speed of 1,300 meters in 3 minutes and saw it vanish behind Point Bredesen. 10 minutes later, it came back along the same stretch of water with the same speed, sank into the depth, and vanished. Its cry reminded me of a gurgling water sound that you hear when you empty a bottle full of water, Einar concluded. He described the animal as grayish-black, 3 to 4 meters long, about 1.5 meters across, and 30 centimeters above the water. It appeared to be smooth, consistent, and looked like an upside-down boat. When I asked Einar what he thought he had seen, he said, "No idea, really, but I'm sure it was alive." Lake Vättern, 1975. In August 1975, a tourist was at the shore of Lake Vättern, Sweden's second largest lake, 130 kilometers long and very deep, outside Hjo in province of Västergötland, taking pictures with an Instamatic camera of the scenery. In the corner of his eye, he saw a large body of an animal that looked like the now familiar upside-down boat. He quickly lowered his camera and snapped one picture. When the picture was developed 1 week later, the evidence was inconclusive. The tourist claimed that there was a hump in his picture. It might be a wave as well. Fishermen in the vicinity backed his story, however, saying that something large and unknown has ripped holes in their nets. Lake Tingstad Trask, 1976. In July 1976, the swamp monster reared its ugly head from the depth of Tingstad Trask on northern Gotland, a large island off the Swedish east coast. Trask is the Swedish word for swamp. That's where they called it the swamp monster. That's why they called it the swamp monster. Tingstad Trask, however, and don't be confused now, is, despite its name, a lake and not a swamp. The depth is only 3 to 5 meters with a good visibility. Thereunder, however, is a layer of mud that, according to tradition, is some 80 meters deep. In that mud one can find what is called bulvarket, a log construction from the stormy past of Gotland. That construction the villagers had small platforms and houses where they could hide when enemies closed in. Wow, interesting. Teacher Henry Bendegard, whose son Per, an acquaintance to the family Rune Thomason, was fishing from their boat at sunset when an unknown animal surfaced 100 to 150 meters away from them. What we saw was an animal some 2 meters long, with a roundish head and some kind of tail, said Henry Bendegard to a local paper. It was seen on and off that same summer, both by locals and tourists. The paper speculated that an underwater connection between Gotland's #1 tourist attraction, the fantastic Lamalunda Caves and Tingstad Trask, but this has never been confirmed. Lake Torn Trask, 1981. 5 years later, Anton Stockel from Kiruna, in the far north, took his son's family to their summer's cabin at Salmi Lake Torn Trask, Sweden's deepest lake, with its 150 meters. It was Monday, July 20th, 1981, and they had just launched their boat when grandson Per shouted, "Grandpa, what's that moving on the lake?" Anton Stockel, what we saw in a distance of 400 meters was an animal, which slowly moved towards deeper water. It was black in color and 15 to 20 meters long. In a telephone interview, he later told me that his father had seen the animal in the lake some 60 years earlier. The description was the same, a large roundish animal which looked like an upside-down boat, Anton went on. I know of many people who have seen it, but they are afraid to be ridiculed. Expedition 1997. The background history is in my book, The Great Lake Monster, the something at Seljord, Nessie, and others, published by Larsens in 1995. And after more than 20 years of research on the subject, I have now become part of the team that is going to search the lake in the summer of 1997 using the latest in technical equipment. We are no fanatics. Our working hypothesis is that people have seen something alive and unknown in Lake Storsjön, but we don't want to speculate what this might be. We'll work unbiased and methodically, and our results will be documented for independent research by established scientists to study afterwards, so there could be a professional analysis of them. Storsjön, the Great Lake, is just as great as its name says.
It is the 5th largest lake in Sweden, situated at 292 meters above sea level and has a surface of 456 square kilometers. It has a medium depth of 30 to 50 meters, and as one part of the lake divers has measured the depths up to 100 meters. It won't be easy to search the Great Lake, but we are surely going to try. For this purpose, we need the most advanced echo sounder, sonar, underwater cameras, and such that the market has to offer. We need cars, boats, and fuel. We need tents and complete camping equipment. All of this we're looking for sponsors, companies, or private people. You can contact us through email, fax, or phone. I will tell you what we have in store for you if you become a sponsor. Okay. Let me see if I can find the name of this guy.
Okay, so I've done a little research, and it looks like the guy who wrote these articles that we're reading in the Internet Crypto Newsletter section of Gary's folders here, files, is a Swedish journalist, Jan Ove Sundberg. This guy, I think. And he passed away in 2011 from cancer. But he wrote this book. This is the book that was alluded to. So I think all these are translations. They must be English translations of originally Swedish articles, because I don't think there's an English translation of this book. This is the book that he referred to about the Great Lake Monster and other Swedish monsters, and Nessie and other lake monsters. So Jan Ove Sundberg. Okay, so next time we're going to check out where we're at now. Searching for Nessie, I think. All right, so see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. If you appreciate my efforts to preserve the archive of Gary Mangiacopra and would like to support this work, every month I gotta pay website fees and storage locker fees, and I don't make any money off this website. Please consider becoming a patron of this channel. I'll include a link to the Patreon page in the description.